And speaking of choices, everyone, I guess we can get to the second half of the show, which, like I said, we're going to be hyping up Across the Spider-Verse. And to hype it up, we're going to be looking back at the original Spider-Verse, the choices it made, the stuff that was different from the comics, and maybe even what the comics could learn and have learned in some cases.
Yes.
I thought this would be a fun thing. I was just going to make this a solo video because I'm not sure if I'll be able to see the movie until Saturday, which means I don't know if we'll be able to do a show next week, but I wanted to put something up. But I said, fuck it, you know what? It was a light week on books and news. Let's make this a discussion thing for me and Matt, because people like these when we do these.
Yeah, people seem to do like them.
Yeah, so I made a little list here on my phone, which is where I make my notes. On the toilet, at the grocery store, whenever inspiration should strike. I feel that's when I'm the most creative. Like everyone, I'm a simple man.
Yep.
Just on my phone.
I know exactly what you mean. You'll be like shopping in the grocery store. I need to pick up mac and cheese. Oh, this is a good idea for a new video.
Yeah, or just when I'm falling asleep at night and I'm like, I gotta write that down.
That's the worst. That's the worst.
Yeah. Then I look at it in the morning and I'm like, what the hell is that? But no, I actually made good notes, everyone. So I think the first note I want to talk about, and I've mentioned this many times before, but I think it bears repeating, one of the smartest things the original Spider-Verse movie did, and one of the best ways that they really helped differentiate Miles from Peter as a character and kind of give him his own agency and his own identity, is they made him an artist. In that first movie. He loves music, he loves graffiti art, he loves all of these different things, and I thought that was such a clever idea to differentiate him from Peter, who's very, logical and scientific and everything. It shows that Miles is very smart too, but he's smart in the completely opposite direction by being a sensitive artist. He's left brain over right brain, or whichever part of the brain
the opposite to Peter. It was so cool, and it lent as well to like giving him some style and something that like differentiates him from Peter in terms of like how his costume looks, how he presents himself in like combat and everything. He's very creative with like how he deals with villains and everything.
It's fitting too, because I think it ties into like the bigger theme of the movie too, which is such this moving piece of art that uses like real comic pages and panels and different art styles from all the different universes. It only makes sense that Miles is an art guy.
Yes.
That he is an art guy. I think I was reading somewhere before, like the actual frames per second on Miles and his world actually change as the movie goes on.
It does, yeah. I think like every Spider person is like, they're done in a different art style, which is then also done in a different frame rate or something.
Which is
to help to censure. Yeah, it's again, this movie is so fucking good. It's so creative,
so layered with so many things, like shit that I wouldn't even catch the first time. I didn't catch that until someone had to tell me about it, and then when I did, I'm like, oh, I'll never watch this movie the same way again. I think that's another great thing about Spider-Verse. It actively gets better every time I watch.
Every time you watch it, yeah.
Which I cannot say for most other movies, that it gets better every time I watch it. But yeah, making Miles an artist is actually something that the comics kind of tried to do their own take on. They didn't just straight up say, oh, he likes graffiti art now, but solid in a near the midpoint of his run, Miles got a journal as part of like a creative writing class, and it's something that Cody Ziegler has actually carried over into the book now. In fact, Miles's narration is done in notebook panels because that's what he's doing. He's writing down in his journal. He journals now.
Yeah, in the Miles Morales video game, the music is the big part of it. So he actually also gets it from his uncle Aaron as well, where he's like sent around. It's like side missions where he's sent around to like record certain like sounds and stuff to make music with, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
I still haven't played the Miles game yet, but I think I'm going to buy it next paycheck because I know I'm going to be on a big Spider-Man kick, and now I finally have the PS5, so I can play it the way it was meant to be.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, Miles being an artist, a thing that actually did translate to the books. He's not like an art and paint artist now, but he's a creative writer now, which is something I could see them actually play with as the series goes on. Would it not be interesting if at some point in the future, Miles gets a job at the paper, but not as a photographer, as an actual writer?
As a writer, yeah.
As like a guy who does actual columns and everything, and I'm like, oh, that would be interesting to show. Yeah, Peter is a guy who takes pictures, Miles is a guy who actually writes articles.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
And if you're thinking, hey, isn't that a little too Superman? Again, remember in the video game, they made Mary Jane into a journalist. Which is fine, because Mary Jane's had like 600 fucking jobs. Sure, she can work at the goddamn paper.
It makes a bit more sense, yeah.
And it keeps her close to the action and everything, which is always good for a superhero to be close to the action.
Yeah.
Another thing that the movie changes, and it's something that the books have never tackled, and it's something I hope Ziegler does tackle eventually, the idea that Miles had friends from his old school, and we actually briefly see them before he goes to his fancy, hoity-toity, richer, downtown, let's face it, much whiter school.
Yes.
And it's such a brilliant idea because it's like, oh, they're setting up in this movie even early on that Miles is already dealing with feelings of being a poser and being a sellout and everything and being a fake before he even ends up starting to live his spider life and having to deal with the Spider-Man legacy. And I think that is so cool. And they don't really talk about it. They don't really refer back to it. It's one scene, but it's such a powerful scene.
It is. It's fantastic. It also informs like the rest of the film, where he doesn't see himself as like he can't, like there's that thing where he can't access like the spider sense and everything, and it gives him that what's that thing, like imposter syndrome,
yes,
sort of thing, where he is very capable but he doesn't seem to think he is.
And again, we don't really see the idea of heroes dealing with imposter syndrome all that much, and for a movie that's so much about the Spider-Man legacy, it's a genius addition.
It is. It's fantastic.
Collie Frederick helped us out in the chat. I wouldn't mind Miles as a newspaper comic artist. Ooh, that would be fun, actually. A guy in comics who makes comics.
He does the like political cartoons.
Ah, there you go. So he becomes Aaron Magruder, is what you're saying. He writes the in-universe Boondocks. Hey, was it Kyle Rayner a comic artist at some point, or did he draw something else? I know he was an artist.
He was an artist. I want to say he was at one point.
Am I thinking in the superhero cartoon he did comics for the Planet? Was that the thing, because they had to work him in somehow?
I think so, yeah. If I
want to say.
Yeah, I want to say. Man, there's a lot of Lanterns who are like artists, because like John Stewart as well was like an architect for a minute. Yeah.
So he can draw, but again, doesn't draw art.
Yeah. Well, maybe he does. Maybe. I mean, his buildings are art. So
in their own way, but it's it's the more colder mathematical thing. It's not known for its creativity, but it kind of is known for its creativity.
Yeah.
Now, shockingly, they have never bothered to explore a lot of Miles's formative years before joining his fancy academy in the comics, which I think is a missed opportunity because I think there's a lot of story potential there.
There is. There absolutely is.
They also kind of retcon it, too, to where it's like, oh, well, he must have met Genki, his best friend, first day of school, because they go there. Only, I don't know if it was Bendis in his last couple of years or Saladin Amid at some point retconned to go, no, they were actually friends before. They just never went to school together.
Okay.
Like, I think they, met at the park or something in their area. And I feel like, yeah, Miles would had to have had friends from his old school. Wouldn't it be interesting if they rolled back into his life and, what lives they have been living since then because they didn't get to go to the nicer school in the nicer area.
Yeah, and again, that's something that you could explore in a storyline.
Very much so. In fact, hey, Cody Ziegler, if you're listening, that one's free. Because, yeah, it's something that I think would really, really do well with Miles. Hell, the last great story from Ziegler in the arc that just ended was all about Miles' school life and the idea that he won his place at that prestigious academy by lottery, which means that there was someone out there who missed out on it and someone who might have actually made more of the opportunity than him. And to see Miles actually learn from that and to try to apply himself more at school, knowing full well that, people would kill to be in the position he is. And again, it's a great opportunity for him to show responsibility. I need to be responsible for this.
Yes. Yeah. It's so great. So layered and just interesting character building and
quintessentially Spider-Man. Isn't it nice that Spider-Man feels like Spider-Man?
It is, yeah. And it's simple as well.
Very.
It's just it's not none of this fucking he was chosen by the web of
Spider God,
Spider Totem God. Yeah, none of that bullshit. Yeah, it's just so simple.
Yeah, that story is so good with the rabble because it deals with chance and happenstance that has almost always been at the center of Spider-Man as a character, where it's like it could have been anyone, but it ended up being me. And I don't think of the people that, who are punished by fate, the people who always get the bad hand and everything. And he even says to the villain, like, look, you're not mad at me, you're bad, you're mad at the concept of randomness is what you're mad at.
Yeah, chance, yeah.
Yeah, you're mad at chance and you can't take that out on me, but also that's a great motivation for a villain too, to be unrealistic and to be, to be mad at something that no one can control, and to have Spider-Man be this avatar for this part of my life that I could not control.
Yeah, it's great. It's
great shit. Another really excellent thing the movie does, and something that I wish the comics would pick up on, or at least pick a lane on this subject, because I feel like they keep trying to have their cake and eat it too, and that is Spider-Man's relationship to Peter. Because it feels that the books don't really know what they should do, and there's two very strong contingents out there who I think both have good points. When it comes to Miles, there's the first camp who think, oh, well, obviously, Peter should be a more active participant in Miles' life. They should totally hang out more. He's wearing a costume like his. He's sharing the Spider-Man name. Of course, it should be a mentor-mentee relationship. And then you have people on the other side who go, no, Miles doesn't need that. Miles was Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe. He had all the responsibility. He had all the pressure, and he, thrived and came above it anyway. He doesn't need Peter hovering over him. If Peter hovers over him, that robs him of his agency. And they're both kind of right.
Yep.
And I know Solid in a Mid basically had it to the point where it's like, look, Peter knows where Miles lives. He'll come visit him, he'll give him leads and help him out on cases, but he doesn't stay for his birthday party.
No.
That's the relationship they have, and you can call that, keeping him at arm's length. You can call that being a little too professional or a little frosty, but that was how Solid in a Mid viewed it, and no writers really tried to come back to it since. What the movie does, which is genius and how it kind of skirts this line, is by having Peter B. Parker be the Peter that Miles knows, because his world's Peter dies early on in the movie. He gets killed, and so basically Miles' mentor is a Spider-Man who's already down lower than he could possibly be, who's kind of lost faith in being Spider-Man, and so you have this amazing double act where Miles learns to be Spider-Man, but also teaches Peter B. Parker what it means to be Spider-Man again.
It's such an interesting dynamic, and one you don't really ever get with like the multiverse and like stuff like that.
Even just in like superhero legacy relationships, it's really awesome where it's like, yeah, I learned from you what it meant to be Spider-Man again. I taught you, but you taught me, and we're both so much richer for having known each other. And it's like, man, how friggin' smart is that?
It's just so good. It's so good.
And it gets to the point, too, where it's like, I don't know how the comics could do that, how the comics could so beautifully skate that line outside of killing Peter. And having Miles make friends with a totally different Peter, because again,
which is what they kind of did with Miles, because his Peter died on the Ultimate Earth, and then he made friends with the 616, but it went in like a different way.
Direction. And also too, Ultimate Peter died until he kind of didn't, because he came back, but then the universe was over by then.
Yeah.
Which, oh fuck me, Ultimate Comics are coming back again. I guess they're gonna have to deal with that at some point.
I guess so, yeah.
What if Ultimate Peter lives again?
Oh fuck.
Do you think Hickman would do that, or do you think they would be too afraid to pull that trigger?
That is something that they should do, just because it's such like a big thing.
Because the Ultimate Universe, dead mean dead, and they stuck to it pretty good, except for Peter, though the implication was he was maybe a clone, but they never got to finish that story because the universe ended. And I do get the distinct feeling that Hickman really likes Miles because he put him in Secret Wars.
Yes.
That was the series that basically started the crossover between the universe. Yeah, I know they had Spider-Man before that, but that was kind of the harboring of, yes, Miles is going to stay. And at the end of that story, because Miles was so nice to Molecule Man, he got to stay and he got to exist when his whole world got glassed.
Yeah. It's, I'm really intrigued to see like what they're going to do with that, because they haven't released anything about like what that whole Ultimates thing is, and there's been like no teasers in the comics either, like like
No.
Miles finding out it exists again and Maker coming back or anything. So couldn't really go anywhere. I'd like to see that Peter come back just to see what that dynamic would be now that you have Miles as the established, he's been Spider-Man for however many years now.
That's also another, back and forth fight that the comics have had too, and that is how much should Miles actually remember about the Ultimate Universe and his adventures? Because if so, doesn't that create a philosophical nightmare that he remembers this other life that he lived in, this other world that is now gone with all these people that he knew in passing, not directly related to him, but knew in passing, and his mother who died. Remember that? His mom died in the Ultimate Universe, but then got to be alive again in this universe because of Molecule Man doing him a solid. Like, would that not fuck with his head? And Sultan Amid played with it too, because he fought the Ultimate Goblin and Ultimatum, who was actually Evil 616 Miles, who also traveled the universe. It gets really fucking complicated. But basically, Miles got flashes of the other world and what things were meant to be.
Yeah, and he hasn't had one of them in a while.
No, he hasn't, and I wonder if that's like a Marvel thing where it's like, stop referencing it.
Yeah, I could see it being that. Maybe he will get it. Maybe that'll be like a thing we see before the event starts.
Because I know some writers are really invested in it, because if you take away his years in the Ultimate Universe, you take away his most formative years and one of his best stories, because if you take away Miles' origin, he doesn't have one at that point, and then you're really left holding the bag, because then it's like, well, what the fuck do you reference in the new stories? You can't reference his past up until a certain point.
Yeah, exactly.
Or else you get in trouble. I remember, what is it? Oh god, why am I blanking on his name now? Guy who did Outsiders and Detective Comics for years. He basically got the hit job to be like, okay, you gotta write a new origin for Miles in a special one issue, because this was right when Bendis left, and they're like, we're burning everything Bendis ever did out of spite. And it was a terrible fucking story, and everyone hated it, and it was a really bad new origin. And then when Saladin Amid came back, it's like, fuck it, we're actually just reincorporating this. Yes, Ultimate Universe happened. He has a spotty memory, though.
Cool.
Is what they did with it. Yeah, cool is what it was. But yeah, that is a thing that the comics are still very much dealing with. How much of Miles' life in the Ultimate Universe does he remember? How much of it is important, and should it be important?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and the answer is, I don't know. And yeah, as the chat's saying, they tied his origin into Secret Invasion because he fought a Skrull. It was really fucking weird.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that.
It's a weird one-shot that they don't want to remind you that they commissioned.
That they have, yeah.
They don't want you to remember that one. Another great thing that I think the movie did, as opposed to the comic, and it's something they're kind of running with, changing Uncle Aaron's death and also making Uncle Aaron a more likable, affable guy. Because in the original stories, he is just a pretty bad dude. He seems cool at the start, but he's really just gaslighting Miles to help him steal like a bunch of supervillain technology for himself, which he ends up basically overdosing on and dying. Miles gets his own uncle death, but it's very different than Peter's uncle's death. The movie changed it by making him a lot more affable, Uncle Aaron, a lot more likable, and making his death seem like a lot more like, well, you kind of reap what you sow, not so much you did it to yourself, because in the book, he definitely did it to himself.
Yeah, the movie makes him very much more, can, like, understand why he is doing what he is doing as, like, Prowler and everything.
The comics also weirdly did not keep him dead. Bendis brought him back when he fused the universes. He became a weird Iron Spider and had his own weird Sinister Six. That was dumb.
Yeah, that was stupid.
That was fucking He also just wakes up alive one day and he's like, oh, I'm alive. How about that? And they just don't deal with it, so that kind of cheapens his death right away. Sultan Amid did better, where he actually reconciles with the Morales family, and he gets to hang out with his brother again, and he gets to help Miles and be this kind of mentor figure, but like from another side of life, where it's like, your dad will teach you these lessons, I'll teach you these completely different lessons. He also kind of sacrificed himself to defeat Ultimatum, so he's died like 3 separate times. Which again, Peter's like, oh, my Uncle Ben died once and I'm sad. Yeah, my uncle died a couple times and it made me sad.
Yeah, I don't even know if he's still alive. He could be dead today and alive tomorrow.
He might not even be dead. I think the implication is he went to the Ultimate Universe, wherever that is.
Yeah, okay. So again, this is stuff that this upcoming series could probably broach.
It could definitely broach. It also begs the question, too, will the movies play with this idea, too? Because obviously, as we're seeing it across the Spider-Verse, it's not, the first movie was all about other Spider-Men coming to Miles. Now this is Miles coming to other Spider-Men, and I really want to see them play with this idea where it's like, okay, but what are your family and friends like in this universe? What about a world where Uncle Aaron didn't die? What if he was still alive? Would he still be a villain like the Prowler? Hey, what about a world wherein, maybe your father didn't become a cop? Maybe he actually followed his brother into a life of crime and supervillainy.
Yeah.
Maybe your dad is the Prowler in one universe.
Yeah, well, what's really interesting about this second film from what we've seen so far is that we haven't seen any variants of Miles. We've only seen variants of, like, Peter or Gwen or Hobie Brown, Miguel O'Hara, but no other Miles.
And I'm sure that's very, very deliberate.
It could be. They could also be doing a thing where it's like, oh, he's the only one. He's like the outlier. He's again he's kind of trudging into territory I don't like.
One territory.
Yeah, I don't fucking like that with Spider-Man, that sort of stuff. But yeah,
I don't think they'll do that. I think they understand, that would be, kind of cheapening the whole thing. Because, like, in the comics, we already have a couple different Miles. We have Ultimatum, who is the evil 616 Miles, because that was, like, a whole fucking story from the two Spider-Men of, like, okay, if Miles is from the Ultimate Universe, then who's Miles in this universe? Well, he's older, and he was friends with Kingpin. In fact, he was there during the Frank Miller years, just off panel. You didn't see him, and Fisk loved him so much, and he's his best friend, and he never mentioned him one time. That's weird. And then he goes back to the Ultimate Universe, or a universe that is like the Ultimate Universe, but isn't, because it's like right next door, and Ben just was leaving and he didn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
He's like, he went back to the universe I created, eat me. And then Solid in a minute is like, okay, he comes back and he's a villain and he has a bunch of, like, weapon and gear from the Ultimates. Miles also has his own evil clone, Salim. So he has his own clone bad guy, and also, I didn't read the Solid in a mid-finale, but also there was an evil Miles who was, like, in control of his own alternate universe, and it's a whole thing.
Jesus.
I didn't finish that. I'm like, oh my god, we're doing another evil Miles? We just did a fucking clone story, and all that. There's too many evil Miles!
There's also that awful one where they made, they did the What If Miles Morales, where he was like...
yes.
Thor or something?
Well, they made him a couple things. They made him Captain America, Thor. Yes. They made him a couple different Avengers. Everyone just remembers the Thor one because it was uber racist.
Yeah, it was awful. It was terrible.
Yes. Well hated with good reason. I'm sure I mentioned this somewhere elsewhere too, but what I think is cool about Miles, and it looks like something the new movie is going to tackle, his biracial heritage. He's not just the Black Spider-Man, as everyone calls him. He's half black, half Hispanic. Speaking Spanish with his mother is a big deal in the trailer. His mom, who actually looks like is going to be a bigger part of the movie, which is something the comics don't do as much. Usually it's all about Miles's relationship to his father or his uncle. I like that his mom gets something to do here, but also, hey, you know who else is biracial? Miguel O'Hara, half Irish, half Hispanic. And I know that the fact that they bring up Miles's heritage, that's going to be important in the movie. He's probably going to speak Spanish to Spider-Man 2099 at some point, and it's going to be a big, like, oh, we're not so different, you and I moment. And it blows my mind because I'm like, yeah, that is true. And the comics have never made that comparison before and have never made that connection.
They has Miles ever had a run-in with Miguel? Yeah,
I think he has in, like, the bigger Spider-Man things or the Spider-Verse stories, but I don't think they've ever talked for any meaningful amount of time.
It'd be cool to have them team up.
Very much so. And the fact that this movie seems to be running with the idea, too, where it's like, look, we're all Spider-Man, but none of us are Peter. And And there's something about that, especially as they bring up the idea of suffering, because I think it's like Gwen who says, being Spider-Man is all about suffering. You can't have it all. And Miles is like, but I can, though. I have a loving family, and I have friends, and I have a school. Why does Spider-Man need to be all about suffering? And it's something that I think is really fucking poignant right now when we look at modern Spider-Man comics, where that seems to be all they can do to build drama. It's like, well, let's make him suffer.
Yeah. It is really interesting to actually have a Spider-Man thing come out and say, no, you don't need to do any of that. We can have it all. And he can be a hero and everything.
Yeah, what's the point of being super if you can't have it all? And I'm like, wow, that's really interesting, and the complete opposite message to what the comics are saying right now. And I'm like, man, that's pretty dope, actually, and that's actually pretty smart.
Mm-hmm.
Also, isn't it funny, too, and I know I'm not the first person to say this, but Miles' dad has now been a cop in more things than he's not.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it?
Cop in the movie, cop in the game.
Yep.
Had a couple jobs in the original comics. I think in the original Ultimate books, he was an architect, and then later we heard a whole story about how he did have a criminal background because his father and brother were criminals, but he tried to get away from it, and so S.H.I.E.L.D. and Ultimate Nick Fury brought him in to be like a mole to try and take down Ultimate Kingpin.
Oh, Jesus.
And it was like a whole thing, and then in the new universe, he was also technically still an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. at some point, but just retired. And again, I feel like the books never know what to do about that. Where it's like, yeah, what do his parents do? His mom's a nurse, we know that. We've seen her at work a couple times.
I wonder if they'll start following what they did in the game, because in the Miles game, she ends up running for mayor and becoming mayor.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, after her husband dies in the first Spider-Man game.
Yes, which again, hey, we don't have the death of a Prowler, but we do have the death of his father, though.
Yes, that's what ties him and Peter together in those games.
Interesting. How about that they are so similar but so not? Also, speaking of similar things that I wouldn't be shocked if the movie actually drew comparison to this at some point, Spider-Punk is Hobie Brown, yes?
Mm-hmm.
In the main 616 universe, Hobie Brown is Prowler. Except for in the Ultimate universe, where Uncle Aaron is Prowler. Uncle Aaron was Prowler again in the main universe for a while, but Hobie was also Prowler, but then he got killed and brought back as a clone for Clone Conspiracy, and then no one ever wrote anything about Hobie ever again. I'm surprised no one's told that story yet, where Hobie shows up at the Morales house and it's like, your uncle took everything from me. I'm not even me anymore.
He looks like Aaron. Yeah.
Yeah, he's much cooler than me. He has lightsabers and shit. I don't have lightsabers and a cool motorcycle. I'm just a cat burglar. That's all I do. I burgle. I think his original origin, Hobie Brown, is he was a window washer or some shit.
No.
He was a window washer. He's like, well, I'm up here, so I might as well steal.
Yeah, makes sense.
That thought everyone has had when they're up high. Man, I'm up really high. I should start stealing. Like you do in New York.
It's the lack of oxygen.
Yeah. And all the cleaning fumes, that'll do it to you. It gives you a lot of bad ideas. He gets down on the ground and he's like, man, what was I thinking?
Yeah, what was I thinking? I should have huffed all that Cleaning product.
Yeah, I should have huffed all that cleaning thing. So this is the problem, too, with doing this video just like a conversation, because I really don't know how to end this. These are just some thoughts I had about the first Spider-Verse movie, how cool it was, how I think the comics can adapt some ideas, how they already have, and really just how excited I am for Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, that first film it's so good. Because you told me we were going to be doing this, I ended up watching it again. I got my 4K version out. And threw that up on the TV, and
it's beautiful, isn't it?
It looks so good.
It's a moving work of art, and they say the sequel is even better. Guillermo del Toro was talking about it, is a moving work of art, a testament to writing your own story. I don't know why I'm making him sound Italian, Guillermo del Toro. But that's something. Cully Frederick, do you guys think we'll ever see that Silk series? Oh yeah, Amazon is still apparently working on a Silk series.
Yeah, and there was also another series as well, I think. Some Spider universe or something with Madam Web or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't Silk Cindy Moon also supposed to be a character in that Madam Web movie that they were doing? that I guess they're still doing, but no word on when it's coming out.
I don't fucking know. I know, like, all these shows are stopping just because of the writer's strike at the moment. Strike, yeah. So, like, they're not doing anything with them.
Also, like, Lord and Miller, the guys who are doing Spider-Verse, did such a good job. They were put in charge of all of Sony's Spider-Man stuff. But, like, you really don't seem to see their hand in this, and they don't seem to talk about it as much.
You don't see their hand in literally anything, because they're technically in charge of stuff like Venom and Morbius, and that's still, like, those films still happened under their watch. So, like, is it like a name-only thing? It's like,
probably
just to get people, like, just to assure people, you know?
You know what it is? Maybe they're like, look, we'll give you a bunch of money for these Spider-Verse sequels if you let us basically use your good name.
Yeah.
And because they're hard-suffering animators who know what it's like to have stuff like Clone High canceled on them, they're like, all right, we'll do this.
Yeah, then maybe that's how we ended up with a sequel to Spider-Verse, but not just a sequel, but like a two-parter sequel.
Two-part sequel. Also, someone told me something crazy online. Apparently in an interview, Lord and Miller said the reason the Spot is in this new movie is because Avi Arad wouldn't stop bugging them about it. And they eventually broke down, and they're like, you know what, maybe we can do something with the Spot. Which, again, we see regular Spot, but he also apparently has, like, some sort of crazy monster form.
Yeah, he looks, like, really cool, and I like what they're taking this villain who's really a joke villain. And making them, like, an actual threat, and having fun with it as well.
It looks like they're doing both. It looks like he starts as a sillier villain. It looks like Miguel O'Hara is the real, like, you know, antagonist, if not villain for most of it. And then they all probably have to come together to fight whatever it is the Spot becomes.
Yeah, well, I think the idea is, I think he stumbles into, like, the multiverse or something,
probably.
Or like finds his Spots can travel the multiverse or something, and that gives him extra power, or lets him unlock extra power or something.
Works for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I said, I don't really know how to end this little video piece. I hope you liked it. I hope you liked this kind of deep dive into it where Matt and I talk a little bit more in depth and a little bit more, you know, academically about Spider-Man and all the things we like about it, and just, you know, some good positive Spider-Man talk, because I know come the 26th when I gotta review that goddamn comic, issue 26. Seems like there's not going to be a lot of smiling, so let's get our happy Spider-Man good vibes in now while we can.
And I was going to say, it's very rare for people to be talking about Spider-Man nowadays and actually have good things to say about it. But
tell me about
between this and the game, there is good things. There is good things.
Keep your eyes peeled to the channel, everyone, for that video review when it comes out. And also be sure to listen to the Comic Multiverse episode 307 whenever that drops. You can find it on all the podcast apps. You can find it on Patreon and everything, where Matt and I will eventually be talking about Across the Spider-Verse in its entirety before we've seen it. Actually, my local theater, the next town over, is actually having a Thursday showing, which they never do for anything, which tells me they're expecting this to, you know, blow the fucking doors off.
Yeah, they've seen the ticket sales, yeah.
They've seen it, and they're expected to blow the doors off. And I'm like, oh, man, you know, maybe I will travel like an hour just to see it at the big theater.
Yeah. I again, this is like one of those films that you have, like, usually I'm like, you can, like, wait to, you know, it comes on stream and stuff. But no, go to the movies and see this, because it looks good, and it looks like you're going to need to see it on, like, a big screen.
Yeah, I don't think I saw the original in theaters, and I kicked myself for it, because I'm like, man, this probably fucking slapped on the big screen.
Oh, it was fucking awesome.
I bet. So I'm definitely not going to make that mistake twice. I'm definitely going to see this one. So thank you, everyone, for coming out and watching and checking us out, whether you watched the whole podcast or you just watched this part here that we put up later because we thought the conversation was too good to ignore.
Yeah.
And Matt and I will be back again next week, everyone. As always, if you want to hear the show in its entirety, you can, either live Saturday nights at 10 on Twitch or YouTube. After that, we try and put the video and audio version up on Patreon as soon as possible. You can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. Every little bit helps in this crazy YouTube game. And then Wednesday, I try and drop the audio version basically everywhere that there's podcasts.
Yes. Six Spotify.
Yeah, except Spotify, because I can't figure that out yet. One day, but not now. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching and listening. Matt and I will be back again next time, everyone. Bye-bye.
See ya.